Hi guys, and thanks for joining me today. If you're new here, I'm Marilyn, and if you're returning, thanks so much for coming back. Now, if you like the look of embroidery and rhinestones together, then this might just be the video for you. I have a couple of videos on how I made this shirt. The first video is one where I showed you how I stitched it out and how I added the rhinestones to it. In this video, I'm going to show you how you take an embroidery design and you design your rhinestones around it. Now, if you haven't gotten into rhinestones yet, no worries. You can also make faux rhinestones with the same process. Instead of using rhinestones, you just cut your rhinestones out of sparkle holographic HTV. So let's just jump right on into making this rhinestone scatter template. I already have Silhouette Studio Business Edition opened, and mine is version 5. The reason I use Silhouette Studio Business Edition is because the Business Edition is the only one that allows you to save your designs as SVGs. That's important for me, so I have the Business Edition. Now, the way I'm going to show you today is assuming you're using an embroidery file. To bring in my embroidery design, I'm going to go right up here to File, and then I'm going to click on Merge. And when I do that, I see everything that's on my desktop. That's where I have the file that I'm going to use today. You can always click this down arrow and change where you're looking. But notice my BE file is grayed out, so you can't bring in a BE file. For those of us that use Embrilliance, that's the working file. You have to bring in the actual stitch file. Now I have two that are similar. I started with this file from Creative Fabrica. I made a few changes, and so this is the one I want to bring in. I'm going to select it, and I'll say OK. And you can see that came in really quickly. Sometimes it might take a little longer, but I don't have a problem bringing in the designs. The problem where it takes so much time is when we start to make an offset of this. And I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me keep going. Now everything in this file is separate. The palm leaves are separate, the tree trunk, everything is separate. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and select the entire design. And this takes a little bit of time with Silhouette. But I'm going to select everything, go up to Object, and I'm going to say Make Compound Path. That is going to make it so much easier for Silhouette Studio to do its job in making the rhinestone template. All right, let me move this down here in the middle. Now we're not actually going to make this design into a rhinestone template. This is going to stay embroidery on my shirt. But what I do want to do is I want to make an offset from this, and I'll use that offset to make my rhinestone scatter pattern. To make an offset of an embroidery design, it takes Silhouette and your computer quite a long time to generate that offset. So one thing that I would do before I try to make an offset of this is I would go over here, get a rectangle, get an oval, come over here, draw a small one, and I would see what my offset is currently set at. The reason I do that is because if you try to offset your embroidery file, it is going to take a very long time. And if your offset is set to the wrong size, you're going to waste quite a bit of time. Now with it still selected, I'm going to go right over here to the offset feature. You can either open it here, or if you don't have these icons there, you can go up to Panels and down to Offset. But I like to use these over here. So my oval is still selected. I'm going to click on Offset. And that opens my offset panel right here. So I have my oval here and it is selected. I'm going to go right over here and click on Offset. And you can see that mine was defaulted to 0.04 because that's what I used last time. So let's go ahead and change this to what I want the first offset to be around my embroidery design. And I want to use 0.160. So I'll say Apply. And you can see that that got larger. That's exactly what I want. So let me go over here to the Select tool so I can select both of those and get rid of them. Now that I know my offset is going to be the correct size, let's go ahead and select Salty. We'll click on this left side. And notice nothing happened for a little bit. Then that spinning wheel of death started. This is actually not a spinning wheel of death in this case. It just is going to take Silhouette Studio and the computer a long time to generate an offset around an embroidery file. That's just the nature of it. So you're going to have to sit back, relax, and just be patient. What you can't do is keep clicking on offset, because if you do that, you're actually generating 2 or 3 or 4 offsets, and that's going to take even more time. So click on it once, give it a minute to start spinning, and then let it spin. This could take up to 2 or 3 minutes to generate an offset. So I'm sitting here watching this spin and spin and spin. I'm going to fast forward through this part, then I'll let you know on the bottom of the screen how long this took. And waiting for this to generate is definitely the hardest part of this entire process. Okay, we finally have our offset. Now I'm going to go right down here to the rhinestone panel. So I'll select it, and that brings up your rhinestone panel. Now notice how it replaced the offset panel, and that's because I left the offset panel in this default position for where your panels open up. If you don't want to have to keep opening each panel, you can just move them out of the way. So if I move this out of the default position, maybe put it down here, you'll see next time I go to the offset panel, I'm going to have both panels and I don't have to keep going back and forth, or I don't have to keep opening them. So my offset is still selected. So I'm going to go right here and I'm going to click on Edge Fill. You can see the rhinestones right there. Now notice mine is set to 0.025, but let me show you what the default is. In Silhouette Studio, the default is 0.039. And what this is talking about is the space between the rhinestones. So you have an offset space, which means how far are the rhinestones from the last layer, and then separately you have spacing between the rhinestones. So I'm going to go ahead and change this back to 0.025, and watch when I hit return, those are going to move just a little bit more close to each other. Also, you need to make sure that you're using the size of rhinestone that you plan to use. So I use SS10s, it's called 10SS here, but I call them SS10s, and so I've selected this one. Maybe you use SS6s, you would select this one. For me, I'm going to keep going with SS10s. Okay, so I have my first row. Now it's time to add another row. To add another row, we go back to the offset panel. Since my rhinestone panel is down here, when I click on offset, it shouldn't replace it. So we'll click on it, and we have it right up here. So now we're going to do an offset of the offset. So we're doing an offset of these rhinestones. They are still selected, so I'll click right here on offset. And if you wanted to have your stones spaced evenly throughout each row, you could just keep clicking offset and you'd be fine. But that's not what I want. So let me go back and we'll redo what we just did. Okay, so we still have that first row selected. That was made from our offset. So I'm going to go right up here. I'm going to click on offset. Now I'm going to come down here and change my spacing, because I want this to look like a traditional scatter pattern where the rhinestones in each row start getting farther and farther apart. Now the numbers that you use are just personal preference, but for my second one, I like to use 0.075. So you see that spaced them out. The second row is still selected, so now I can go right back up here to offset. And oftentimes after that first row, I change this 0.160 to 0.150. Again, these numbers are personal preference, and you'll see what it looks like at the end of this video if I just keep using 0.160. So we have our third row, and it is still set to 0.075. On this one, I want to go to 0.150. So you see they spaced out some more. Now let's do another offset. And I'm going to change the spacing of this to 0.225. I'm going to do one more row, so I'll click on offset again, and then I'm going to change this to 0.3 or 0.300. And here's the basis for my scatter design. Now, if this looked perfect, it would be wonderful and I wouldn't have to do much more, but I need to do a little bit of work on it. See this one in here? We don't want that. But first, let's go ahead And let's select each of the rows of rhinestones and let's put a fill color in them. To put a fill color in them, you click right here on Fill Style and it opens, and let's just turn them gray. The other thing is this red circle around each rhinestone, that's just a cut line. So let's get rid of it. Let's go to Panels, go to Line Style, click on the right side, and then go ahead and click on Transparent. I like it so much better when you don't have that red to deal with. Let's go ahead and delete this. The next step, whether you are perfectly satisfied with the design as it is, or if you want to move some around, the next step with all the rows of rhinestones selected is to click on this, Release Rhinestones. Once you do that, it's going to take a minute for it to happen, but eventually, you see the little square around each one. Now, each rhinestone is its own individual object. All right, let's go ahead and click off of it. I want to get rid of this one. I think I want to add another one here. Let me make this a little larger. So to add another one, I can either click on it and hit Command-C for copy, Command-V for paste, or I can hold the Option key down on a Mac and I can drag it. That drags a new one off of it. Let's go ahead and add one more here. I'm holding the Option key down and dragging. Now I let go of the Option key and let me space these out just a little bit differently. Now I don't want to change it up too much. I want it to be basically the scatter that they designed. But there's a few things I do like to do. Notice how these are pretty close together. Let's go ahead and just drag this up a tiny bit, just to give the cutter a little bit more room to get a cut line around each of those. Okay, so I'm just kind of going around and looking. Everything looks pretty good. If I wanted to add one more there, I could, but I don't want to complicate this too much. I'm pretty happy with it. Now, one thing I do see is I would probably either get rid of this, or let me put it back with Command-Z on a Mac, or I could hold the Option key down and I could drag a few more rhinestones up here. Now with embroidery and rhinestones, it's not always a perfect fit because all these stitches make the shirt contract just a little bit. And so an embroidery and bling design doesn't go together as perfectly as, say, HTV and bling or bling and bling. Also, once you get those stitches on the shirt isn't really going to stretch so much. So a lot of the times when you're doing layers of rhinestones on just a regular shirt, no embroidery on it, you can kind of tug and pull on your shirt to get it where it needs to be for those layers to fit correctly. On an embroidered shirt, you really can't do that so much. But let's say I'm happy with this design. I can get rid of this. Here's what I would do next. Make it a little bit smaller. The next thing that I would do is I would go right up here to Panels, Select by Color. I'd come over here and I'd say I want to select by a fill color and I want to select by gray. So that shows all of those. Then there's a couple more steps. You have to go up here to Object, and first you're going to group it. If you just skip to the next step and you go Make Compound Path, these are going to jump around. You don't want that. So let me go back one step. So this time we'll do it the correct way. We'll go Object, Group, and it's taking just a minute for those to get grouped. Then I'm going to go Object and Make Compound Path. And oftentimes when I make it a compound path, I lose my color, but that's okay. It's still a cut file. So the last thing that I would do is I'd go ahead and get rid of this, and I would save my file. Now I want to see what the dimensions are. So it's 9.532 by 7.651. With rhinestone designs, it's very important that when this goes into your cutting software, such as for me, I'm not cutting with a silhouette, it's very important that when this goes into the cutting software, that it comes in at the right size, or if it doesn't, because oftentimes in Cricut it doesn't come in the right size, but I want to put the size of this file in the name of the file so that if someone is cutting this and it goes into their software the wrong size, they know what the size should be and they can easily resize it. So I'm going to go up to File, Save As, come over here, I'm going to save it to my hard drive, and I'm going to say Salty Rhinestones 10SS. And the reason here I put 10SS instead of SS10 is because the next thing I put is going to be a number. And I want to have my 10 and my other number separated by the SS. Remember, it was 9.532 inches wide. So I'm going to say 9.532 wide by 7.651 tall. And then I'm going to change it to an SVG. That makes it where it can be cut in Silhouette, Cricut, a Caesar cutting machine, or any other cutting machine that takes SVG files. Lastly, I'll say OK. So at this point, I'd be ready to open up my cutting software. I cut with the Caesar Romeo, bring it into that software, remember to check the size, and then I'm ready to cut my template. Okay, I can't help myself. I want to change those back to gray and get rid of that cut line. Then, of course, I'd have to resave it. So if you already do embroidery and you wanted to bring bling into the picture to put around your embroidery files, I hope this video has been helpful. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and until my next video, bye-bye.